we go. Can everyone see that all right?
Yep.
All right. Then I'm going to mute myself and let Jen take it from here.
Okay, so I am just going forward with some things that I've had to struggle with as an entrepreneur. I have rebuilt my business twice. I started out as an academic and jumped ship from academia because of the stress. And so when I jumped ship, I said, okay, I'm going to be a yoga teacher. And that was great and wonderful. But as most people know, you can't really afford a family as a yoga teacher. Besides, I had spent many, many years trying to figure out how to reduce my own stress. And that's how I came into coaching and really focusing on stress management. But because I focus on stress management and because I know so much about it, I also have to walk that walk. So these are just some of the things that I have learned along the way and that really are for entrepreneurs and not for the kind of the more general or broader audience. And the first one is to be your own benevolent boss. And what do I mean by that? I mean that we are our own bosses. And that is both a blessing and a curse, because we can be a dictatorial boss to ourselves and we can be a taskmaster and we can say, well, you're going to stay on this computer until you get this done. Or we can say, you know what? You put in a 12-hour day yesterday. You need to take a break today. So, for example, I was just busy on Monday and Tuesday this week. And I put in, gosh, I think I figured out it was like a 15-hour day on Monday. And then I put in a 12-hour day on Tuesday. And part of that was that I was getting ready for, and I was at a health fair. And I don't know if you guys have done health fairs or vendor fairs, but you're talking the whole time. So by this morning, I was exhausted. And I had to teach a yoga class, which was great. Yoga is always restorative for me. But then I went out onto my screen porch, and I have a yoga studio in my house, which is why I was able to go right outside. And I just put my head down for a few moments, and I decided, you know what? I should be working on this. I should. And I said, nope, I'm actually just going to relax. And I did. And I kind of brought myself back around just in time to do my Facebook Live. But I didn't look like this while I was doing it. I looked like I had just come from yoga, and that was okay. So I really encourage people to say, you know what? I'm the boss. I can decide that I need a break. Because if I don't give myself a break, I am going to burn out. The other thing that I have had to learn the hard way, especially as a working mom, is to just say no. And that can mean that there will be people who are upset with me. So, for example, as a mom, they always want me to volunteer for things, for baseball mom, for Girl Scout leader, for the PTA, all of those things. And I nearly put myself out of business doing that back in the first manifestations of my business. And I had to learn to say no. But I have even learned to say no when it comes to things that should, there's that word again, should be good for my business. So, for example, again, the health fair. The health fair that I did yesterday, it was supposed to go from 1 in the afternoon until 8 o'clock at night. And I knew I did not want to do that. And I was going to pull out of it altogether. But instead of that, I decided to see if I could compromise. So I called up the HR person who was organizing it. And I said, so Emma, is it mandatory that we stay there for the entire time until 8 o'clock at night? Because I have a feeling that your night shift people are not really going to be interested in my services. So this was at the local newspaper. And sure enough, the night shift people, they are the line workers. And to come in and pay a coach $125 an hour, that's not going to work for them. And so I was able to say, Emma, I feel bad putting those employees in the position to say, oh yeah, no, I'm not interested in this. So I'd rather just be there during the day. And she said, oh, that's fine. She said, why don't you just come in from 1 to 5? And that was perfect because I got to talk to the reporters, and I got to talk to the graphic designers, and I got to talk to the mock-up people, and I got to talk, the advertising sales, talk about people who need peaceful living. And these are all my ideal clients. So being able to kind of halfway say no made a big difference. And compromising. And I was lucky that Emma let me do that. But if I hadn't asked, I wouldn't have known. And I may have just said no altogether and lost out on a really good situation for me. So try to compromise as well. Another thing that I really highly, highly recommend for every entrepreneur is to delegate. Delegate those tasks. And that is where my marketing guru, Miss Alexa, comes in handy, because I got to the point where I'm like, I don't do social media. I don't know what I'm doing. I am designing these things on Canva, but really they don't look that good. So I reached out and found somebody fabulous, and I have hired her to be my marketing support person. And that is one of the best things I could have ever done for myself as an entrepreneur. Now, I know that sometimes when we're first starting out, we don't have the money to hire somebody, but I have found along the way that bartering has worked really well. I have bartered almost all of my headshots, gone to up-and-coming photographers and said, hey, I will trade you a stress management breakthrough session for a photography session. And there's all sorts of things you can do with that. And so again, delegation is key, because when we try to wear every hat in our business, as most entrepreneurs do, we will burn out. Now let's go into some mindset stuff. So the first thing I like to talk about in terms of mindset is believe in yourself, not in everything you hear. And I mean that in two ways. For one example, I don't know about you all, but I love to listen to podcasts, and I love to look at blogs and try to learn as much as I can, and I get very overwhelmed by all of that. And I have to dial myself back, and poor Alexa has listened to me moan about, Alexa, I don't know what to do about this. What's your opinion on this? What's your opinion on that? And that's when I'm not remembering to dial myself back and listen to my intuition, what I think is best for my business. So take what you like and leave the rest from that. The other example of that is when people like to rain on your parade in order to sell you things. And I just had this happen to me last week. I went to talk to somebody in one of my networking groups to ask her her opinion on something I want to do. And she just crapped all over my brand. And then she said, but I could help you with that. And it would only be $2,300. And I just responded, I don't want to pay $2,300. And my brand is crafted to be authentic, to be what it is. So thank you. And you didn't even answer the original question I asked you. So that one, I didn't even have to take what I like and leave the rest. I just left it because I believe in my brand and how Alexa and I have been working on it. And believing in myself allows me to say, next, when it comes to those people who want to throw shade. And they do. They want to throw shade because in business they tell us, well, if you get to people's pain point, right? If you tell them what's wrong, if you find where they're in pain, then they'll buy. Well, I'm sorry, I'm 47 years old. This isn't my first rodeo. I've been in business a long time. That doesn't work with me. And I don't want it to work with you either. So don't let people make you feel nervous about your brand. Find the people that you trust your instinct, believe in yourself, and go with that. Go with the people you trust. If people are throwing shade on you and saying, but you can pay for my help, don't fall for that. And then finally, stop worrying. It's the number one thing we do as entrepreneurs. We worry. And we worry because the buck stops with us, that we are our own bosses. We worry because we have to pay our bills. We worry because we're wearing 17 hats. Isn't there an app out there called 17 Hats or something like that that's supposed to help us manage things? I think I saw an ad on Facebook. So of course we worry. But the thing is that if you spend a lot of time worrying, you're actually spending a lot of time not being productive. You're actually taking a lot of your energy away from yourself in order to worry instead of that energy that you could be spending on working on your business. Negative energy exhausts us. And we actually have lots of really cool research to show that to us now, but I'm not going to bore you with all that. You're going to have to take my word for it. Negative energy is exhausting. And it's much more exhausting than positive energy. And the research that we have is based on hormonal studies. So it's nice biochemistry. And so if you can get yourself into a place where you're using positive affirmations, where you're using positive thinking, and where you are spending your time with people who support you, rather than alone worrying about things, you are going to be so much more productive and so much more successful. And that's what we want. We want to be productive and we want to be successful as entrepreneurs. And so, again, just take yourself out of the negativity, take yourself out of the worry, and say to yourself, I got this. I am successful. I am smart. I work hard, and I can do this. And then surround yourself by people who will tell you the same thing. One of my favorite business gurus, Sage Levine, she says, my tribe, my girls, they have my back, my sides, and my front. Because that's who you need in your life. You need those people who are not just going to have your back, but they're going to have your sides. And those people that are telling you there's something wrong with you, so that they can either make themselves feel better about themselves or sell you some high-priced thing, they're not your tribe. So stop worrying about what all those people say. Surround yourself by the people who are going to support you and affirm yourself. All of that positive energy gives you those positive hormones too, which then you have more energy, you're more productive, and you're more successful. So those are my 5 points. Now, it doesn't look like we have a lot of people on the call. So, Alexa, do you want to do some discussion, or
yeah, I'd love that. I actually have a couple of questions in our Slack group that have come up.
Oh, cool. Okay.
One that is actually quite pertinent. And I love that you talked about bringing in your tribe, because a big thing with the AltMBA is we're a community of people who are actively seeking out people who think and behave like us. We're people who are generous and empathetic, and we show up and give, and we get those front sides, behinds, ups, downs, tops, bottoms,
all around.
All around to help each other. And I have an interesting thing from Craig Lewis. Howdy, Craig. He's got a lot on right now. So he's currently looking at a long day, and he's wondering where he's going to make sleep. Yikes, that's not a problem you want to have. So in the short-term interests of burnout, he's not going to make this session because he has deadlines tomorrow for some information that he's presenting that could have longer-term impact on his life. So he's interested in how to realistically balance situations like this, or what are your thoughts on finding balance in work and family, as well as exercise and sleep? Because it sounds to me like he has a lot of conflicting priorities here. And the last two, exercise and sleep, seem to be taking a hit for him, especially sleep, even though he knows it's beneficial. So it's quite a list of things going on there. You know, it sounds like a lot of prioritization with there.
Yeah, and that is a very typical entrepreneurial question, because that is what we're dealing with. We are dealing with, oh my gosh, I have a lot riding on this, and I got to get this done, and it's for a deadline, and where am I going to find sleep, and where am I going to find time for my family, and, right? So in the short term, because this is today, I think, and your deadlines are tomorrow, you're going to have to take little breaks throughout, because what you're doing to yourself by working nonstop is you're slowing your brain down and you're depleting your efficiency. So I don't know if you're a meditator or not. Meditation is the best way to take a break. So for example, 20 minutes of meditation equals an hour nap. Maybe you don't have 20 minutes. That's okay. 10 minutes. You can take 10 minutes every 2 hours. Now, maybe you're saying, now, Jen, I don't know how to meditate. No, my brain just goes. Yeah, I know. I mean, I've been meditating since I was 4, and sometimes my brain still goes. But there's these amazing meditation audios out there. I find them on Apple Music, on Google Play, and guided meditation is the way you want to go with this. You want to put on your headset and listen to a guided meditation, a relaxation meditation for 10 minutes. So that is a stopgap measure that you can take. Make sure you're getting at least one meditation in. Another thing you can do to take a break is, and I don't know what area of the country you're in, but if you can go outside and get some fresh air, be mindful. So give yourself a brain break. Outside is the best way to do it. Take off your shoes. Feel the grass under your feet if you can, or the dirt. Cement if that's all you have. But feel the air. Because bringing in all those senses allows the brain to calm down and to stop chattering. And again, that break. If you have an animal, play with the animal. I go outside and run around with my dogs in the backyard, and they're silly little dogs, and that's a lot of fun. I have a dear friend who lives on a mini ranch, and she goes outside and she spends time with her horses and her pig. I love the pig. So these kind of little breaks. So that's your stopgap measure in this really deadline crunch time. The other thing you need to think about is what you're going to do after whatever it is you have going on tomorrow, because you're going to have to give yourself a break, and it's going to have to be a long break. When you've been on the treadmill and just going, that's how I was Monday and Tuesday, on the treadmill, going, you have to let your body rest. If you don't have that scheduled in, I highly recommend taking a look at what's on your schedule right after this presentation or right after the delivery and moving it, whatever it is, so that you can get some rest, because that is the most important part. Now, in the future, what I do with my clients is I have them put together what I call a success schedule. And what that does is it builds mindfulness practices into their day. Alexa, have you seen this? Have I sent this to you? It's just a calendar that, I don't think so. I'll send one to you, and we can put it in the notes for this. We can put a link to it. And I have them go through and block out their time each day. I do this with entrepreneurs, but I also do it with corporate. I work with a lot of corporate moms, and they block out their time and they color code. And so they have to pick a color that is for break time, for what I call mindfulness time. And they do that on this weekly calendar so that they can look at it at a glance and say, ooh, I don't have enough break time in there. Now back to my first point that I made, be your own benevolent boss. Try to have a schedule like this for yourself, where you have blocked out each day. Now, of course, as entrepreneurs, we have to have some flexibility with that, right? And yeah, I had to flex around the health fair yesterday. I had to flex around a entrepreneurs meeting last week that was in the evening when I normally would be meeting with my clients. So allow yourself flexibility, but stick to that as much as you can, and make sure you have that time scheduled in for yourself. The other part that you need to schedule in is the time for your family. And remember, you don't want to lose your family for your business. And I've had to deal with that as well, that I have a special needs child. And so I have to make sure that time for her to get her to her therapies is scheduled in. Again, as an entrepreneur, I have the flexibility to do that. In fact, that's one of the reasons I decided to be an entrepreneur instead of being tied to the academic desk. So give yourself permission. Give yourself permission to have that schedule where you're scheduling in time for your family, where you're scheduling in time for yourself. Because remember, your business is not going to be successful, and you're not going to have any money if you burn out. Sorry, that was a long answer for a big question.
It is a big question, though, and I think it's something that I've seen reflected in our community very often. Harkening back to one of the questions that we got when we first started asking people in our Wellness Essentials group what they were interested in exploring, more than once it came up, how do you balance this idea of shipping daily, which is something Seth Godin talks about, with everything else without burning yourself out? And I think where that comes from is that we're a community that prides itself on showing up, on being present daily, on being there, on being authentic, on putting our work out in the world. Yeah. That is not only scary as crap because you're telling the world, here's my ideas, here you go, but it also takes a lot of diligence to show up and do that work and sit there and write. Some people are able, they're blessed, they have maybe no kids like myself, they can get up, sit there and write or like work that into their schedule. But for many people, finding that time is either a burden or it's just really tricky. So what would you say to the people who are looking to find ways to continue putting their work out there in the world every day, to continue showing up, to be that authentic self and dance with the fear, but are feeling that pressure of how hard it is to do that every day? Because it's not just physically sitting down, there's emotional labor that comes with putting your work in the world. That's like part of being an entrepreneur. It's kind of scary sometimes.
Yeah. So again, I think this is another two-part question. So the first part is about showing up at your desk and getting your work done. And I used to be in a writer's group, and it was to help me get going on my blog. But a lot of the women in that group were authors of fiction books. And some of the best advice I ever got was from them. And that is, treat your writing like a job, that you have to go and sit and write. And Alexa, you know that sometimes I don't do that, and I get my blog to you at the last minute, and that drives you nuts. So that's something that I'm still working on. But if you can have that schedule that we talked about, where you show up at your desk, and this is my writing time. And it's hard because, the ideas don't always come during that time. And that, I think, is where you just need to give yourself permission and say, hey, I've got writer's block right now. So that's what happens sometimes when my blog comes in late, for example. It's usually about my kids that I had to go get them or something, or Lena was homesick as usual. But sometimes I just don't have it. It's just not coming. So I have flex time for myself that, okay, well, that means I'm going to write my blog on Sunday afternoon instead of Thursday morning. Because, well, I had to take Lena to the doctor today, or Lena's homesick from school, or I am so tired from meeting with clients the night before, such and such. So, but flex time is built into my schedule to do that. So that's one thing, is show up, treat it like a job, but give yourself some flexibility with it. The other part of the question is about fear. And fear is a big one, and that's the mindset part. And all of us deal with that as entrepreneurs. But fear is the devil. It is just the devil. Fear does not serve you in any way. And this comes back to that point that I was making about believe in yourself. Don't let those people throw shade on you, but don't throw shade on yourself either. I know some people who are bloggers who they will not submit their blogs. And I'll ask them, I'm in a blogging mastermind group, and I'll say, so how's the blogging going? Well, I haven't done it all month because I just can't get it right. Okay, that's fear. Video. A lot of people are afraid of video. Just do it. That was the best advice I ever got, was just do it. Get on there and do it. Don't worry what you look like. Don't worry if you're blubbering for a while. It's okay. You will get used to it. But until you do it, you can't get used to it. So when fear starts to creep up, that's where I bring in my affirmations. Now, I'm very corny, and people make fun of me about this all the time. Actually, I'm not sure why, but Oprah is my hero, because Oprah showed up on TV for decades being an overweight African-American woman from an impoverished background with people in the tabloids slinging mud at her all the time. And Oprah is the success she is today because she believes in herself and she works hard and she works smart and she's got a great personality. But she wouldn't have that great personality if she didn't believe in herself. And that's one of those things that can help us get past fear. I'm working with a lot of teens in my coaching program right now. And teens, of course, are really struggling with their identity. And so much of it has to do with fear of what other people are going to think of them. Well, what I want to offer to you all is you're not a teen. You're a successful, brilliant adult. And if you are showing up every day, not only are you doing that for yourself, you're doing that for all those people that you serve because you have a gift to give to them. And so if you can just keep telling yourself, I'm doing this because I'm serving others, and I'm doing this because I'm good at what I do. And it's okay if there are people out there that don't like me. Because what did Oprah say? Oprah said, and actually she didn't say this, she said somebody said it to her. I would be boring if everybody liked me. We have that in my graphics. Alexa created a great graphic for me that says that. Not everybody's going to like you, and that's okay. But know that you are serving those people who do. So I don't know if that answers the question well enough.
I think that's beautiful, yeah. And anytime you want to celebrate Oprah, I am all in. Oprah is status. Hey, Lana, I see you just not coming off of mute. Do you have something to add here?
Yes, sorry, I'm in the elevator, so hopefully you ladies can hear me.
Gotcha.
So
Yeah.
I do think it's a beautiful answer, but the problem is that on one hand, you show up or you have this mentality that you need to show up, and yet on another hand, you have this idea of, oh my God, another day, and I'm just burning out. And so this is what I think a lot of us are struggling with, that on one hand, we are committed. On another hand, it's this, how do you understand your body and how do you hear yourself and treat yourself well, that you actually do not have that burnout.
Yeah, I've heard that before as, where do you put your tired? Because you're going to be tired, but how do you tease that out from what's okay and what might be crashing you?
You know, I think, Lana, you actually gave us the answer to that question in that you said, how do you listen to your body? So listening to your body is so important. Listening to perhaps your brain if you're starting to get some brain fog. Knowing what you are capable of on a day-to-day basis. That makes a big difference. Knowing what you're capable of in the bigger picture as well. So again, if you know you're going to have a marathon that you're running for something, that you are on, I call it being on the treadmill, that you're on the treadmill for a while and you have to go, 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 go. Make sure that you know how long you can go before you're going to hit the wall, and cut yourself off beforehand. So if I know that I have an event coming up or a launch coming up, Alexa and I have a launch coming up for something, and it's going to be, this one's not going to be too bad, but it's going to be a little hectic. It's not a big product. I know that as soon as that is launched, I'm going to take a breather. I'm going to take a couple days off. So with things like launches, you can plan in advance. But on a day-to-day basis, which I think, Lana, is what your question is more about, knowing where your body is. With my yoga students, for example, I tell them about how our balance will change from day to day. To not be hard on themselves if their tree pose is not coming on a certain day. I live in South Carolina, which the weather is crazy here. The barometric pressure changes all the time. Balance is pretty impossible on a day-to-day basis. But that's what we need to think about in our entrepreneurial life, not the balance part, but that on a day-to-day basis, our burnout level might change. So maybe you didn't sleep well the night before. You need to be able to dial it back the next day. Maybe you don't know what's going on, but your body's feeling fatigued. Guess what? You're probably fighting off some kind of illness. If you don't give yourself a break, you are probably going to become sick. So pay attention to your body. Pay attention to the signals that it gives you. So that's really important. But also on a day-to-day basis, know when to say, I'm done. I'm done for today. And don't stay on that computer all night long because you have a list of a million things you have to do. Because you are going to be doing them more slowly and less efficiently the more fatigued you are. So tell yourself, I'm going to be my benevolent boss, and I am going to close the computer. I'm going to go have dinner with my family. I'm going to go out and have dinner with some friends. I'm going to take a long hot bath. Now that it's lighter out in the evening, I'm going to go take a hike or a walk. I'm going to play with my dogs, but I'm going to be done for the day. Because I've been in business for almost a decade now, and this is what I've seen happen to people. They burn out. Entrepreneurs burn out at a very high rate. And what I've seen them do is A, shut down their businesses and go back to the JOBB. And then they're usually sad and feeling like failures and just not happy at all. Not all of them. My friend Carlene, she had a great business and just decided that she was done being an entrepreneur, went back to the JOBB, and she's great. But most of the people I know who did that, they're not real happy. The other thing I've seen people do is they end up treating their businesses like a hobby. And it's because they're burned out. And so they'll just kind of dabble here and there. Well, we also know on the other side of the coin that you can't treat your business like a hobby, or it won't be a successful business. So you don't want to go into that stage because you're burned out, where you're dabbling in your business but really not doing much with it. Oh, and there is one more thing I've seen people do. I have two friends actually from the co-work space I used to work in San Diego. They are what we call serial entrepreneurs because they keep burning out really easily. And so they jump in and they're like, yeah, I have this new business and it's so great and I'm doing this. And they did both of these women were doing kind of event things at first and just fizzled. And so then they have this new website and I'm going to do websites for events instead because that's going to be easier than doing the events themselves. And then they do that and then they're working and then they fizzle and burn. And then they go on to the next thing. And actually one of them to date is on, gosh, I think I've known her 5 years now and she's on her 5th business. So that's the other thing that people do when they get into burnout. And we don't want to do that either because businesses take time to build in order to be successful.
So I think that one concept that I hear very loud and clear is sustainability. How is it possible to create this sustainable business, this sustainable life? And so I'm very grateful for your encouragement to do that. I think, so we had a burnout challenge, as Alexa mentioned, and one of the questions that really lit me up was about ways to reward yourself, whether it is vacation, whether it is, a spa, whether it is a movie night, whatever it is. And so I just think that it's important to recognize that you need time to play. And so I'm hearing you talking about the sustainability of your efforts, and I'm hearing this ability, or this is what is coming to my mind as I'm listening to you.
That is wonderful because that is something that we haven't talked about yet, the reward system. So another thing, Alexa and Lana, that we can put in the links on the comments here is my mindfulness plan. And that's a workshop I do, and it's something I do with my clients. And it's just a list of mindfulness, self-nurture things that you can do for yourself. It's just blank spaces, but I ask them to fill out things that they can do on a daily basis, things that you can do on a weekly basis, things you can do on a monthly basis, and also a big treat every year. So some people, what they will do is they will say, okay, on a daily basis, I'm going to meditate, I'm going to take a walk, I'm going to eat a cookie. Yes, that's on mine. Yeah, cookie. Going to eat that cookie, different little things that you can do during the day. I'm going to cuddle on the sofa with my kids and read them a book. On a weekly basis, I am going to make sure that I go to the gym 3 times a week, or I do yoga 2 times a week. I'm going to make sure that I take a hot bath at least 3 times a week. Monthly basis might be something like I want to make sure that I have a date night with my partner, my spouse, or just with somebody new. Or monthly, I make sure I have a girls' night out or a guys' night out. Something kind of bigger that takes a little bit more time on a monthly basis. And then on a yearly basis, do something really great. Now, if you're in the beginning stages of your business and money is an issue, take a staycation, because guess what? You're doing 2 things for yourself. You're giving yourself that much needed break, and you're giving yourself a reward. Now, a staycation can be challenging and because our computer's still there. But if you can find things to do in your community that are fun and not too costly, that will get you out of the house and get you away from the computer, that can work. I do that all the time because traveling with 2 kids can be very expensive. If you can, take a vacation, and that's even better. I give myself a yoga retreat every year, and it doesn't have to be a long one, but it's so important for my renewal to be able to go, and instead of being the teacher of the yoga, to be the student. Instead of being the teacher of meditation, to be the student of meditation. So give yourself these treats that you talked about, Lana, the self-nurture. And when I talk in general about breaks, I'm talking about self-nurture breaks, because that's kind of the core of what I'm teaching people, is to treat themselves well. So again, another really great comment.
I think that's interesting, and it goes back, I was scrolling back in some of our responses to the prompts and some of the things that people got out of them. And I think it can be challenging to decide when you need that treat. And there was one from David Walsh who, it was a big lesson, but he was still stumped by how to decide when something is mandatory versus optional, as you were talking about, like parsing your priorities, as you said, but then also to decide, have the self-awareness to look at yourself and say, it's time for a treat, it's time for a break. Because I think that's a common issue, is that we have to train ourselves to reflect on those abilities to say, no, this is not mandatory, and reflect on that.
In my world, self-nurture treats, and yes, cookies, as long as you're not eating the whole bag, are self-nurture treats. Self-nurture is mandatory. It just is. And I know this not just from my own experience, y'all. I also know it from all this research that we have out there. So Alexa knows my story about that. I almost shut my pancreas down because of stress. And it's in one of my blogs if you guys want to take a look at it. It's on peacefullivingwellness.com/blog. Alexa, I don't even remember the name of the blog. It was so long ago. But that's why treats are mandatory, because it's about our health, guys. You can't keep going like you've been going. If you are one of those people who's been on the treadmill, you can't keep going that way. Even if you feel like you can, chronic stress is the #1 killer in our country, because chronic stress causes heart disease. And heart disease is the #1 killer in our country. And then you add in the other that are in the top diseases, diabetes, high blood pressure, stroke. These are all things that kill people. And you can prevent them by reducing your stress. Losing your pancreas. Not going to kill you, but it gives you diabetes if you lose your pancreas. So, from stress. And that's why it's mandatory. Just like it's mandatory that you show up every day in some way for your business, it's mandatory that you show up every day for yourself too. I think I lost the audio.
I'm here. It's because I had muted myself. Lana, I'm not sure if you have any other inputs here. I have an interesting request because we have about 15 minutes of your time, and I don't want to eat it all up just for the sake of eating it. But I wonder if you had we have these people who are asking about like little things they can do to help. If you had, like we do, 5 minutes and you were going to tell yourself, I've seen your breathing exercises and other things you worked with, what would you say to someone who's like, I have 5 minutes, right? Like help. What would you do in those 5 minutes if you had them? Would you have some breathing exercise you've talked about before where you were, kind of an awareness thing? Would you just say, go play catch in the park? How is there one takeaway and actionable behavior you could share with our group that might help? And I know Lana might have some other feedback for our timing.
It's not a particular thing. My one takeaway from that is do what your instincts are telling you need for that time. So if you need to eat a cookie, eat a cookie. If you need to pet your dog, pet your dog. If you need to hug your child, hug your child. If you need to go out and take a brisk walk for 5 minutes, take a brisk walk. If your brain is going blah, 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 and you need to calm your brain down, meditate. Be in the moment and decide what you need for that moment, because that's what mindfulness is all about. Mindfulness is not just meditation. Mindfulness is about being in that moment and knowing what you need in that moment.
I dig it.
I wholeheartedly agree with that, because I think recommendations and suggestions, like knowing yourself, I think that's the important piece, and recognizing what it is that you need at this point. And I think that many of us do not know ourselves very well, and that's part of the struggle. But as we become older and smarter, I hope that most of us recognize these signs and these symptoms, whether it is burnout or anything else that's going on. But breathing exercises certainly work very well for me as a pause. But it's funny that as much as I love meditating, I'm not very consistent with this. So I would do it for 2 or 3 months, and then I will stop, and then I will go back to it. And but also I have decided that I'm going to forgive myself, and that it's not going to be something that, you have to meditate on a daily basis. When I feel that I need to get back to it, I will. But, so finding balance. And so balance is not a static state, right? So it's always like one thing is going up, another thing is going down. And I think that from that perspective, it's important to remember that one day you might need to spend more time, with your family, doing things that really nurture you personally, and yet another day it will be something that will be a lot more related to your business. One element that I actually wanted to ask you about is I'm an academic as well, and I have a full-time job. So for me, what I do with my website, my blog, my podcast, it's a side hustle. And so this is, and I know that this is similar for a number of people in our community. So I think that sometimes it becomes trickier. So people start talking about, okay, so you wake up at 5:30, or you stay up later. And so this is the part that I struggle with the most. How do you remain balanced? And so how do you, keep your priorities straight, and how do these things, how do you take care of yourself in that situation?
Well, when I'm working with clients that are doing something like that, where they have a full-time job and they have a side hustle, they're usually coming to me because they are so out of balance, and they're in that gray zone of, I'm just in chronic stress. So one of the first things I ask is, well, why are you doing the side hustle? So I would want to know, what are you getting from it? Are you doing it because you have to monetarily? Are you doing it because you love it? And we have to kind of parse that out a little bit more, because if we are juggling too many things, it doesn't matter how much we love it, we are going to burn out. There are a few people out there in history who have been able to survive on 4 hours of sleep. I believe Benjamin Franklin is one of them. Martha Stewart claims that she only sleeps like 5 or 6 hours a night. But most of us don't. Most of us need 8 hours of sleep a night or more, especially as you get older. And most of us cannot keep going with the stress hormones, because we will shut our bodies down. So I would want to know why. Why are you doing the side hustle? And if it is because you love it, then know that that in and of itself is a form of self-nurture. If it is because you love it, you don't have to do it to where you are burning yourself into the ground. Now, if it's for money, then I would have to spend some time to spend some time with a coach to figure out what you can do to earn the money that you need without putting in these kind of hours. Because again, it's not sustainable. So if you're doing it because you love it, do it enough to get your fix, so to speak, but don't do it to where it's stressing you out. If you're doing it for money, we got to step back and figure out how to get you more money without doing this juggling act.
This is an awesome recommendation. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks. I wasn't sure that was quite what you were looking for.
No, I think you got it exactly. For example, I'm not doing it for the money, but I love it. And so, but on the other hand, I'm a perfectionist. So when I say that it's going to be done on a weekly basis, it gets done on a weekly basis, but then I'm looking at the hours that I'm spending at night or in the evening or in the morning or whatever it is. So I'm really grateful for that reminder that remember that this is your fix because you love it. And so once again, make it sustainable. Yeah.
Well, and the other thing that I am working on myself in terms of the showing up every week on something, because I'm not a perfectionist. I've given myself permission to come back from that. Because that's how I was in grad school, getting that doctorate. I was top of the class, right? I had to pass my PhD comps with honors, nearly killed me. So I've given myself permission to not be that perfectionist anymore, even in my business. But you still really can't just, we're going to forget about the blog for a month. I know I've done that a couple of times though, Alexa, with the blog for a week, but we can't do it for a month. So that's where the delegation can come in. Right now, I am looking for guest bloggers to fill in when I just can't do it that month. And I'm going to have a whole team of bloggers who are trying to have a voice in the world, but they don't want to set up their own blog site, or maybe they have their own blog site and they want to have their blog site trackbacks. Is that what those are called, Alexa? Trackbacks? Linkbacks?
I think backlinks is the SEO term.
Backlinks, thank you.
More exposure.
You never get this stuff right. That's why I'm so dependent on you. So I'm going to have other people showing up. So Lana, I don't know if maybe having somebody who can be your backup for the podcast. That's one of the reasons I don't podcast right now, is because I don't want to be tied to that podcast every week. But I do know people who do podcasts in teams. And so they trade off their podcast time. And that's something that you can do so that you don't have to feel like, we're not going to podcast this week. Does that help at all?
Yes, very much so. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I love Lana's podcast too. It's so good. It's so well done. You could tell you're a perfectionist because it is really, really well executed. You would never really know that it's a side hustle. And I've learned so much about this. Listen to one on cooking. That was amazing. I was like back in the kitchen with herbs after that. The kombucha one was fabulous. So it's really interesting.
Will you put that in the comment section so that I can pick it out?
Yes.
I'm a podcast junkie. And I need to stop listening to Instagram. How to get more Instagram followers podcasts.
That'll stress you out.
I know. It's going to get my marketing guru to fire me if I keep going to her with, what this lady said to do this to get Instagram followers.
Or you'll burn me out, one of those. Lana, that's all the questions that I have prepared on my end or from our community. Is there anything else that you're thinking that perhaps we should cover here?
Jen, is there something that you think that we didn't cover that would be interesting for this audience? And also, how can they find us? How can they find you?
Well, so I think depending on who all is in your audience, there of course are many, many different topics that we can talk about. Our first question that came in from the Slacks was about family. So there's a lot of stuff that I talk about having to do with balancing work, life, and family. There's a whole lot that we can do on mindfulness, and this is obviously an ongoing topic. And so one of the things people can do is they can subscribe to my blog at peacefullivingwellness.com. And I talk about this stuff every week in the blog. And now we're going to have some new voices as well talking about the same type of thing in the blog. And if you subscribe, you get it once a week in your inbox. We don't spam. We're not one of those companies that send something out 4 times a week. No, it's once a week. So there's that. The other thing is that if you are in a situation where you feel like you are out of control with your stress, that you just don't know what to do with it, I really highly suggest seeking out a coach or a therapist. I'm a coach, so I'm biased towards coaching, but I think coaching works really well for entrepreneurs because coaches, what we do is we set goals and action steps. And if you can have somebody who has your back to motivate you and inspire you to take care of yourself, to be that successful entrepreneur, and also be that really whole, healthy, happy human being, I think that's where coaching really can come in. If you have issues that are going deeper into your psyche, there are things that are in your family of origin story, that's something you want to go to therapy for and get those worked out if those are the reasons that you're burning yourself out. But I think that we all need support. So find a coach in your community. If you're in a time zone that it works, I'm in the East Coast, reach out to me. I'm happy to talk to you. I give free breakout sessions, stress relief breakout sessions, breakthrough sessions. Sorry, I'm not used to using that language. Somebody told me to use it. I'm happy to help, especially for this community. So yeah, I mean, definitely get that support. And whether it's a coach or a mastermind or just a tribe.
So good. Yeah, asking for help. It's something we all need to recognize. If you're spinning, contact Jen or someone. Shameless plug.
Yeah, there's a lot of us out there. And I think just really, even a mastermind, if you can meet with people who are going to be supportive of you, and make sure that part of your mastermind is not only are you reaching your goals in your business, but are you reaching your self-nurture goals?
Smart. I dig it.
And very beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I think we are running short on the time that we have already reserved with you, so I want to be mindful of that. And I'll be posting this replay everywhere. I'll link it through your account so people can find you and talk with you and get a little more, kind of dive deeper into this whole burnout concept if they're interested.
That's great. And because they're PDFs, I can just upload a PDF, can't I?
Yeah, I can make some links for you.
Okay. So I'm going to send over then the mindfulness plan and the success schedule.
Okay.
That people can do. Because those are helpful little tools.
Yeah, I'll host them on your site so people can go and as a file, so I can leave a link to everything. Yeah, we'll get all those resources. I have a whole list of things I need to get from you now.
Good. Okay, you just send that over and I'll get it to you. Perfect. All right, thank you everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Insightful questions, and Lana for inviting me to do this. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, we appreciate your time so much, and we'll talk to all of you soon.